Okay, ladies and gents, welcome back to the F1 show, the Peter Walsh podcast. Guys, it's the Brazilian Grand Prix. And we're going to get into the nitty-gritty, the nuts and bolts, the meat of what we're going to expect this weekend. We're going to do a track preview. Because I think today, the Brazilian Interlagos track is a sacred ground. Now, some of you may have heard me before and you probably know exactly where I'm going with this one. Let me say something to you right now before we get into the nuts and bolts. I want you to listen carefully. This weekend, it ain't just another Formula One race. It's not another round. It's not another grid. It's not another podium. It's sacred, holy ground. This is Brazil. And ladies and gentlemen, this is Ayrton Senna's house. Every single Formula One fan, whether you started watching during the Netflix era or back when Murray Walker was the heartbeat of a Sunday afternoon for Formula One, they knew that Ayrton Senna was the fastest out there. They all know he's the greatest. I mean, you even have Formula One drivers say that, oh, well, you know, there'll be certain drivers will tell you that guy's the best or this guy's the best. But really, they all deep down know that Senna was the best. I mean, you've got F1 people saying that. Ladies and gentlemen, this race in 1991, where Ayrton Senna was stuck in fifth gear, was without a shadow of a doubt the greatest performance that Ayrton Senna ever had, and it was also the greatest F1 performance the world has ever seen. It was romantic. Let's get into it.
Walsh running the Irish green, and look at the move he's making down to the inside.
Moves to the front, what a move from fifth all the way to the lead in lap one.
Walsh takes win number 2.
Peter. Wow. Guys, you know, I know that Netflix really exploded Formula One, okay? Obviously, it's hugely popular now. So I understand that a lot of people, you know, I'm sure you've heard of the name Ayrton Senna. No doubt you have, but you probably don't know much of him. And look, hey, that's totally understandable, you know? You only plugged in when Netflix really just blew it all up. You see, Senna wasn't just one of the other racing drivers. He was racing the impossible. Physics, exhaustion, human limitation itself. Imagine this. He was stuck in fifth gear at Brazilian Grand Prix. Now, you might say, okay, what does that mean? Now, he was racing in H-box, manual gears, okay, where you literally had to take your hand off the wheel, go down to the right-hand side of the cockpit and start moving up the gears up, back down, up sideways, up and down again, right? And he had a clutch. They had 3 pedals, not 2, like the modern Formula One cars. Now, I want to try and make this real for you and really trying to visual how hard this was. And Senna went on to win the race, stuck in fifth gear. Now, imagine this. For anybody that's driven on the road, you know the way sometimes you've stopped at a red light. Now, look, even I have just sort of made that mistake, you know, or just, you know, you're just not thinking, right? Where the red light's on, green light goes on, and you take off from a standing still position. And sometimes you just accidentally, by mistake, just put the car in second and you start to take off. Or you've actually started in third. So, you know, we all know that if you're taking off, you should be in first gear. But we've just, I don't know, not thinking, you just put it into second or you put it into third by mistake. And then you start taking off and then you realize the car is getting really bogged down and it's heavy, right? It's stiff, do you know what I mean? And it sounds like the car is going to cut out. Now, that's what Senna had to put up with this day. Now, for those of you who've never driven a road car, let's say we're talking about a push bike, right? So not a motorbike, a push bike. So imagine you had a push bike that's got, let's just entertain me on this one, all right? Give me some rope. Let's just say you have 10 gears on your push bike. Imagine starting off from a standstill and you're on a green light, let's say, or wherever you are, and you're not taking off in your first gear. You're taking off in 8th gear. 8th gear. Okay? Now, imagine you're going through... Now, think of this as well, guys, for your road car and your push bike. Imagine being stuck in your push bike in 8th gear and having to slow down going through corners, right? Or going through a bend near your home, or if you're even on the road. And you have to really slow down, and then you've got to take off again. Now, on your push bike, we all know that, you've got to really muscle with your legs to get going, right? Because it's really tough and tense and hard. This is what Ayrton Senna had to do. Now, if you're in your road car, let's say you're stuck in 3rd gear, and you have to slow down into a really tight corner, or somebody in front of you brakes hard, and then you've got to slow down, but you're not at a standstill, but you've got to accelerate again. But your road car is stuck in 3rd gear. This is what happened to this man. And let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, we're not racing on the road. These guys are. And Brazil track, as I know, we're going to go through it there now, obviously, when we move on after Ayrton here. But you'll see the track, or maybe you know it already. There is some very, very slow corners on this track. 2nd gear corners, okay? You're not stopping, obviously, at a standstill, but you're going down the gears because you've got to accelerate fast out of the bends. There's a couple of those corners, 2nd gear bends, and then you've got to be Johnny on the ball with the acceleration coming out of those corners because you've got some fast corners flowing coming up. So even that went against him, right? It went against him there as well. Because he wasn't just going from a slow corner, then straight into another slow corner, which, you wouldn't capitalize on accelerating out at that stage. But you're capitalizing coming out of that 2nd gear corner in Brazil because you're going into long flowing bends. So it's very, very important for Ayrton and any of the drivers that race in Brazil this weekend to get out of those 2nd gear corners really ultra smooth, ultra fast, because you can accelerate and keep that momentum up going into those fast flowing bends. So he had everything against him. And, for Ayrton, the clutch is useless. The gears are gone. He's only got one left. Every acceleration, every corner, every acceleration, every braking point is a nightmare for him at this stage. It's an absolute nightmare. You can't downshift. You can't accelerate properly. The guy couldn't get into 6th gear. So even when he finally, on the main straight, when he finally picked up some pace, he couldn't even go beyond 5th gear. So he had it from both angles. Both angles. And guys, it's kind of like, maybe here's another comparison. It's kind of like trying to run a marathon with a broken leg and then sprinting the last mile to the finish line. Let's give you some backdrop here, right? Senna was already a 2-time world champion at this stage. The world knew his name. He was the man. But this race was very, very personal. Obviously, it's his home track. He wants to win for the fans. He wanted to win at home, in front of the Brazilian crowd. They just adore him. Even to this day, guys, right? I'm sure a lot of people know that if you are living in Ireland, where I am, we have a lot of Brazilians now that live here in Ireland. And any of the Brazilians I talk to this day, still classify Ayrton Senna as a goddamn hero. There's not one Brazilian person that I've met in Cork City that does not know the name Ayrton Senna. He was up there with Pelé. He still is up there with Pelé. Now, I'm not even a big soccer guy. I don't even know anything about football or soccer. But I do know the name Pelé, and people know the name Senna, even if they don't watch Formula 1. They bloody well know the name Ayrton Senna. He was up there with Pelé. And, every Brazilian kid looked up to him like he was a god. all of us in Formula One, motor racing world, in karting, Formula Ford, Formula 3, 2, Formula 1. Everybody looks at Senna as a god. You know, he was the Marlon Brando of acting. He was the Michael Jordan of Formula 1. You know, he was the Pele of football, you know. And I'll say this straight. The man had driving rage. He had a man possessed. You know, when Senna drove, it wasn't about beating people. It was about, like, putting a hole in their soul, transcending people. You know, he once said, being second is is to be the first one of those who loses. You know, I'll never forget when I heard that one. And, you know, you might roll your eyes and say, well, that's arrogant. No. That's conviction, man. That's conviction. Because what Senna said, he meant it with his soul. Now let's picture this. Senna, in that race, he's out front. The gearbox begins to go. And he loses fourth. He then loses third. And now he's only in fifth. And this is it. It's all to play for. The commentators, they just couldn't believe what they were seeing right in front of them. You know, the moment they knew, oh no, he's in fifth, they're all thinking it's over. It's all over. And they just could not believe. The pit wall could not believe what they were seeing in front of them when all the drama unfolded and they all realized he was stuck in fifth. You know, I couldn't believe what I was watching. I remember even watching this race. I think I watched it live, or maybe I saw it a recording. I can't remember, but I obviously watched this race. But, you know, what's crazy, the crowd didn't even know it yet. They're just roaring, you know, they think he's flying. You know, but inside the cockpit, Senna's fighting for his goddamn life. Every corner, he's wrestling the car like a beast, like a raging bull. Every acceleration, you know, the revs bog. The engine is like shaking almost. The whole thing threatens to stall, and through all that, he's muscling the car and he's praying too. You know, you can actually hear him after the race whispering thanks to God because he wasn't just driving anymore. The guy was surviving. And, you know, and here where it gets insane. You know, he's in fifth. The man doesn't pull over. He doesn't retire. He keeps pushing because this is his home crowd. There's no way he's going to give this up easy. And this is where, you know, you've got influencers now who need 3 Red Bulls just to edit a YouTube video. And this guy's out here, you know, wrestling a 700 horsepower car with one functioning gear and winning. Then comes his greatest moment. This was his greatest moment, ladies and gentlemen. Not winning the 3 World Championships. This was his 9th symphony. This turned romantic. He crosses the line. He wins. The Brazilian crowd obviously erupt. People are crying, flags waving. See, I'm getting going here now, thinking about it again. It's like a movie, like it's real. And then the guy had to stop the car, and he couldn't get out of the car. He couldn't lift his arms. He couldn't move. And they had to help him out of the car. They had to hold him in the car just to get his body to decompress, to calm down, to relax, to just soften up with the muscles maybe, and then try and get him out of the car. But it took them some time. You know, he was shaking. He was beyond exhaustion, but he did it. I mean, that image of Senna sitting in the car, trembling, eyes closed. That's a portrait of what it means to give everything, to pour your entire being into something, knowing it could destroy you, but you do it anyway. That, my friends, is masculine poetry. That's not ego. That is goddamn devotion. And on the podium, he tries to lift the trophy. and his arms won't move. He barely got it up for about a second, and then he had to drop his arms again. That wasn't victory. That was transcendence. And, you know, there's a quote from the great American football coach, Vince Lombardi. Now, don't quote me exactly, ladies and gentlemen, on this quote, but it went something like this. The greatest accomplishment a man can ever have is not in never falling, but in rising again after you fail. And he also said, the greatest accomplishment a man has is when he's lying on the battlefield in complete exhaustion, but victorious. Now, what does Vince Lombardi mean by that? What he means is it's all about winning, right? I mean, to a degree, but there's different types of winning out in the world, you know? Just because you don't win the race, maybe you've won. Maybe you've won. You've defeated the demons in your head. You know, you conquered a fear that you've always had. You know, and maybe you didn't even finish on the podium in Formula One, but you finished fourth, but you accomplished something. You got over, you faced your biggest demon you could ever have, and you stared it right in the face, and you just grabbed it by the horns and punched the living daylights out of it. You weren't afraid to stand up. Now, for Senna, he did win this day. And I think and what Vince Lombardi means is that, yes, Senna was victorious that day, but he was exhausted, wounded on the battlefield, so to speak, could not get out of the car. He put everything into it. Everything into it. It wasn't just about winning a race now. It was about accomplishing a very dark place where you're stuck in fifth gear. You're physically exhausted. He had to accomplish the fifth gear problem, the physical exhaustion, what would you call it? To try and have the composure to not have a panic in the car. To not panic. Like, oh my God, I'm going so slow here. I have to keep... Because he wasn't consistent every single lap in fifth gear, right? You know, he still struggled, coming out of those second gear corners. Because, he was battling with that car. So, you know, he wasn't consistently slow every time he came out of those second gear corners. He was better than sometimes, right? One lap he might be okay, but then the next one he was a complete disaster, because that's what he was up against. Nightmare after nightmare. You know? And, you know, and I've seen it, guys. You know, even for myself, I have to admit, obviously every driver wants to win races. Okay? But I've had some easy wins. Very easy wins. And, you know, I'd have to rack my brain now to remember where exactly did I have them. I do remember I did have them, but I don't remember the race. I don't remember much of it, you know, because you want the real fight. You want to go up against the challenge. That's what you want. You don't want the easy win. You don't want the easy win. You know, I'll never forget my first race. Not my first. I'll never forget my race win in Zandvoort in Holland, where it was my first race win that year. And I just knew a guy who passed away in the same type of car as I was driving. I was up against it. I didn't have any luck that year at all. And if I didn't start winning, it was pretty much career overtime. I was under insane pressure. And I went out and won the race. And for me, that was the greatest victory of my life. It will always stay with me. Every time I think of racing and the good times, what I really think of, and I've said this before in the podcast, It was the bond and brotherhood. It wasn't what I do remember, the champagne smell, right? The big smiles. But what I really remember, which is number one on the list, is my father, my mother, my race engineer, before the race, before going into battle, and getting that handshake while I'm strapped into that car, looking up at them, giving them the thumbs up or handshake, and them giving me the wink. Because they knew that there was a chance that I might not be back. That I might not come back. And, racing cars were a lot more dangerous back in the 90s, guys. They were. Safety's come on a long way now. And, you could argue, well, the racing cars in the 60s were way more dangerous. Yes, they were. No question about it. But they were still an element of danger. So my point is, guys, I'm not here to say, by the way, I'm great, okay? But I'm not saying that. What I'm just saying is that, when you're up against it, it's not just about the race win. You're up against other personal demons, other obstacles. You could have multiple obstacles in your life. So if you're listening at home, watching this, whatever it is, it doesn't matter if you fail. Just face it anyway. Face it anyway. Because you will get over some demons. Avoiding them doesn't get rid of anything. And I'm telling you, I never met Ayrton Senna, and we'll pack it up now, guys. I didn't know Ayrton Senna. I always would have loved to have met him. But I tell you this, I would bet all the money in the world that was his greatest achievement. Because he went up against every single obstacle there possibly could. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg you, if you are a Formula 1 fan, YouTube that race when he was stuck in fifth gear, and to see that man exhausted. And let me tell you this, when you see him on the podium trying to lift that trophy, have you ever seen any other Formula 1 driver struggle like that in the last couple of years? And I'm not having a go off any drivers, because they didn't have power steering back in Senna's days. They do now. So things are easier. And it's not the driver's fault. It's just the way regulations have gone. But have you ever seen a driver struggle like that? No, we haven't. Ladies and gentlemen, Ayrton Senna, the god of Formula 1. I love you, sir. You're always the best and always will be the best. Okay, guys, so let's get to the track. It is such an awesome track, guys. Anti-clockwise, the camber, off camber. The gradients of this track are just insane. It's fast, it's bumpy, it's slow. It can throw your car at a moment's notice. We could have rain this weekend, which would be awesome. And, I mean, going through you've got into turn 1. You've got to really keep the momentum and the rhythm going through turn 1 and 2. Then you're going flat out into 3, and then you've got that long straight. So it's very important to keep the momentum up around this track. And turn 4, very, very important corner too, fellas. Long straight, you can't scrub off too much speed going into 4. Keep those revs up and power on through 4 and 5, and you got to keep, again, momentum up. It's all about momentum. Momentum is the key around here. And of course you got the midfield, guys, which is another very slow, very tight area of the track, but you'd be amazed how many times people can actually pick up a tenth or 2 even through this area, because sometimes it's the blind side of racing, where a lot of times you might think, oh, we need to really make sure we're going through those medium high speed corners, that's where we're going to capitalize. But then you can set up the car like that, but then guess what you've done? You've sacrificed some speed because you've set the car up for the high speed and not the slow speed. So this area can catch people out too. You'd be surprised. And we've just talked about Ayrton Senna stuck in 5th. This area was an absolute nightmare for the guy. I mean, trying to get out of these corners in 5th gear, it's unbelievable. So definitely, guys, next, the most important corner on the track, turn 12. This is what it's all about. This corner is very important to get out of quick. You've got a couple of things against you here. Turn 12 is the last corner. Technically, it's really the last corner on the track. If you get out of here, smooth, keep the momentum up, you can carry all that speed down, all the way down the straight and into turn 1, because it's flat out from out of 12 all the way down until turn 1. So it's very important to keep the momentum up. And also what you've got is, you've got a couple of bumps. You've got the curb on the inside, which can just sort of throw you off just a little touch, right? If you're not too smooth and precise and specific with your cornering speed and the throttle. And you're not only that, you're also going uphill. So you're going uphill, gravity's against you, so it's even more important to be smooth and powerful coming out of that bend. All right, folks, strap yourselves in, because it's getting juicy, it's getting dramatic. This is where the heartbeat of Formula 1 starts to shake the ground from beneath us, I hope to dear Lord. Guys, 4 rounds left, 2 sprint races, and the tension you can feel before even the wheel turns. Lando Norris just 1 point ahead of his teammate. I mean, this is exactly what we want to be seeing here. Well, what we want to see really is Verstappen to dominate this weekend and the two boys take each other off. I'm sorry, any McLaren fans out there, I apologize. If you've heard me before, Oscar Piastri has been my man all this year. I've wanted him to win the championship. However, with Verstappen making such a comeback, if Verstappen pulls this off, he's going to have the greatest comeback in Formula 1 history. There is no two ways about it. It will go down in the history books. It will go down of people saying, 10 years, 20 years from now, guys, people will go, guys, speaking of comebacks, I presume you've seen Verstappen's one, right? You've seen the highlight show of it, yeah? I mean, we could be marking a page, a turning point, a flag in the ground of history in the making. Now, let's not get carried away. He's still a little good bit behind here. Lando Norris is on 357, Oscar Piastri's on 356, and Verstappen's on 321. So what is that? That is 36 points Verstappen's behind. Now, okay. Let's say he does win this weekend, and the two boys take each other off in the sprint and the Grand Prix. They don't finish, and Verstappen goes on to win both. I'm realistic. Highly unlikely that's going to happen. All right? Okay? I'm not trying to dazzle anybody with crap talk here. That's highly unlikely. Now, at the same time, it is likely, it's realistic that the two McLaren boys could take each other off in at least one of the races. Now, especially we've seen so many rivalries happen over the years. If you only remember, guys, 2021, we had Hamilton and Max Verstappen. How many collisions did they have? It was insane, the amount of times they had offs. I mean, Imola, two of them end up in the gravel trap together. Silverstone, Verstappen goes off. And there was more. Senna and Prost, McLaren team. Senna and Prost, back in the day, they had so many collisions, it was a nightmare. And this happens all the time. Hill and Schumacher, they've had problems. And there's only 1 point in this. So this is where, guys, that it's not that they're intentionally going to go out and knock each other off, the two McLaren drivers. It's just the pressure. I wouldn't even say making them crumble. I would say it's forcing them into positions where they don't want to let go. They don't want to show that they want to show that they're standing up for themselves. They have to prove a point to the other guy to try and even, one, just stand up for themselves, or two, try and take that guy out psychologically. That's what we have here. Now, Piastri definitely has that mentality. Does Lando Norris? Remains to be seen, but hopefully I'm wrong. And hopefully these two boys give us one hell of a show. Now here's the cool thing, guys, about the psychology of this, right? Only just a few races ago, Oscar Piastri was 31 points in the lead. Then they went to Baku. What happens? Piastri has an absolute meltdown, and he doesn't even finish the race. He's nowhere to be seen. Gone. Good luck. No points. And I've said it and I'll say it one more time. At that stage when he was in the lead, and when he did go off in Baku, that was not pressure, guys. Okay? If you're a Norris or Verstappen fan, I'm sorry to burst the bubble here, but it wasn't pressure that made him buckle up. In fact, if anything, it was the complete opposite way. He got it too easy. It was too cushy. He fell asleep at the wheel. Okay? Piastri, he's that type of guy that he needs the fight. He needs the street fight, the dog fight. That's what I'm getting from him, you know, and I've been, believe me, I know enough racing drivers in my life to see this. And he needs the fight. Now, look, at the same time, you have to be the whole complete package too, right? Now, yes, we can all make mistakes in life, and racing drivers make mistakes. Lord knows I've made so many, it's unbelievable. Every racing driver I've ever known has made an enormous amount of mistakes, okay? But this wasn't a pressure mistake. So, you know, here you've got Verstappen in still an uncomfortable situation here, where he's still 36 points behind, but in many ways the advantage for him is that in a way he's got the best seat in the house because he's got no pressure on him. It's all just gloves are off. It's chase, 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 fight, fight, fight. So that's the advantage he has. Now, let's get back to the two McLarens. Like we said, Piastri only a few races ago falls asleep at the wheel. Everything was too cushy. Lando Norris was chasing. Now it's complete reverse. Only just a few races afterwards. Lando Norris is now the man that they're chasing. He's the man defending now. Oscar Piastri has now gone from this is way too cushy to I've got to chase now. I've got to fight. The psychology here, guys, it is amazing. I mean, this is war with a handshake between two teammates. Like, let's get one thing straight. McLaren have built a hell of a car this year. There's no question. Red Bull, they're chasing. Their cars come on leaps and bounds. Now, the question is, does it have the overall balance still? But it's looking solid. It's looking bloody good, lads. Let's be honest here. You know, both cars are strong, balanced. But I tell you something as a racer. Once two drivers in the same team, okay, not two different teams, once two drivers in the same team start fighting for the title, there's no team harmony anymore, lads. It's all an illusion. Okay? You know, imagine if you have this a-hole boss, right, working at your company, and you're like, oh, hell, thanks, John. The moment he's gone, prick, right? No, you're backstabbing him galore. Okay, but you're putting on a nice little face. And I'm not saying they're going to be backstabbing each other, but they'll be the fake, hey guys, how are you? Oh yeah, good. But at the same time, they're thinking, I'm going to destroy this guy. You know? And then maybe Piastri and Norris, maybe they'll get to a stage where I'll put this guy in the wall before I finish second to him. And I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. And here's what makes this fascinating. It's a generational rivalry, right? You've got two young lions who were watching Verstappen dominate. Now they're trying to dethrone the guy. And now Max, he's sitting there like a crocodile in the river, man, waiting for one of them to make a mistake. He's been down this road already before. He's had the psychological knife fights, you know? And with Ricciardo, with Hamilton, you know, with the world, you know, and now he's watching these two, well, not kids, but younger fellas take swings at each other, smiling that quiet Verstappen smile, like, you know. Here's what I think is happening, guys, and you can quote me on this one. So the mental tide has turned for now. I mean, Lord knows it could turn again this weekend, okay? God, Lord only knows. It's so hard to predict. But Piastri, no longer managing points. He's hunting blood now. Lando is no longer chasing glory. He's protecting survival. And you can see it in their interviews now. Lando, he's still cracking the jokes, the laughing, the smiling. But I think there's a nervous energy with him now. That's a man trying to convince himself he's relaxed. Now, maybe he just generally is. Maybe I'm totally wrong. And that's worrying. That's very, very worrying if I was a Zach Brown, the team owner, or even his dad. I'd be very concerned going, he's way too relaxed for this. And meanwhile, Verstappen, out there with nothing to lose. The gap's big, but it ain't impossible. 2 sprint races left, 4 full Grand Prix. That's a swing of over 100 points on the table. And, guys, a lot of drama does happen at the Brazilian Grand Prix. In not every year, but in many of the years. We could have rain this weekend. And if the rain comes, I hope it does. I really hope it does, because you never know what could happen. And just don't know what to think. I'm going to make a prediction. This is bold, but I'm going to go for it. Verstappen to take the win. We're talking about the Grand Prix now, guys. We'll just sideline the sprint for now. The main Grand Prix, Max Verstappen takes the win. George Russell second, and Kimi Antonelli finishes third. And with a little bit of optimism, I'm going to say, I don't wish any, touch wood, God forbid, hopefully, if the 2 McLarens take each other off, hopefully, obviously, we don't want them to have, something where they hurt themselves. Of course not. Of course not. Like I said, touch wood and knock on wood. It would be nice to see them take each other off. And it is possible. Because the championship now, it's coming to the high stakes end. Now, it mightn't be this weekend. It could be another one. And like we just talked about a minute ago, we've seen Verstappen and Hamilton. How many collisions did we see them have in the 2021 season? How many did Senna and Prost? Damon Hill, Michael Schumacher. It's very realistic. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you on Monday, and hopefully we have a cracking one. Talk to you then.
Walsh running the Irish green, and look at the move he's making down to the inside.
Moves to the front. What a move from 5th all the way to the lead in lap 1.
Walsh takes win number 2.
Peter. Walsh.